Since we had e-patient Dave, I think he's the most tweeted person since the conference started. So it's a pleasure to have you here, really.
Well, thanks.
And we talked earlier about the fact that you wanted to talk more and present something to the audience. So please feel free to talk about whatever you want to talk about.
Well,
I will not ask any questions. I will not post any questions. It's all yours.
No, you have to. You have to. We need to interact. This is engagement, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
There's no end to the things I will talk
about. You're the one who has the valuable information.
Well, no. This is really an interesting conference. I go to a lot of events, and things are being said here that I'm not hearing other places.
Like
okay,
what?
one great example is the session I was just in was on engaged e-patients, and I asked the moderator at the beginning, are you going to define what you mean by e-patients? Because a lot of people mean a lot of different things, and if people have a conversation with different definitions, they get confused, But they actually didn't. But what they had was 3 intense quantified self sort of stories where people are self-tracking, doing research, figuring out for themselves what's going on, not in contradiction to what doctors say, but in addition to. And in every case, what they did themselves added to the quality of the outcome, improved the outcome, accelerated the outcome, and what struck me is that when quantified self first came along, a lot of people, a lot of observers were saying, this is a major risk with people who are only in it for the business and they don't know the customer reality. All right. A lot of people said, this is just narcissism. These people are just fascinated with their own navels. Now they want to measure it and tweet the result. Well, that's not what's happening here. All right. What we're starting to see is the culture, the applications, the data environment are maturing in a way so that real, tangible, identifiable things are happening here. Right. And physicians in these stories who are alert to this, awake to this, are seeing new things happen that they couldn't do on their own. And it illustrates that an empowered, informed, thinking, enabled patient can be a better partner to the physician.
I was actually fascinated by the fact yesterday in your presentation that you said when you got your cancer diagnosed, your doctor actually prescribed to you an online forum to go to and to communicate with other patients. How often do you think that happens nowadays? Well,
I don't have any data on that. What I do know is that more and more physicians are realizing that this can be legitimate. The challenge we have in his case, in Dr. Sen's case, he knew the manager, the creator of this online community for my disease. Of course, most doctors don't know somebody who they know is good and reliable for every disease. So we need to build up a sort of I don't know, maybe it'll be something like a Yelp or TripAdvisor ratings system for, this community is good, this community is bad. A side note, something that I just discovered in a blog post from a year ago, Susanna Fox, who's one of the best researchers in the world on what people really do online, commented last year that in the dialogue about whether vaccines cause autism, most of the pro-vaccine discussion that she found was on Twitter, and most of the anti-vaccine discussion she found was on Facebook. Now, if that pattern bears out, you could say that the conversation on Twitter is likely to be more professional and thinking, where the conversation on Facebook is more likely to be emotion-driven and less scientific. I don't know. But what we're finding now, a common thing that several people have asked me about at this event is, how do we know what information is good? There was a poll question this morning. If we look at all this information online, will we become what some people call cyberchondriacs? Will we become a little bit hypochondriac? That question goes all the way back to Adam and Eve. Is it good for us to see this information? We might get scared. All right. Well, that's a true sign of the culture changing and the front wave moving forward. the solution, obviously, as with, knowledge from the Garden of Eden, is not to keep people away for their own good, but to teach them to understand what's happening so they can have more ability themselves.
I was also interested in asking you, there is no doubt that there is a lot of valuable information on social media. I mentioned Twitter and Facebook. How can we actually make use of that? Take this forward.
Well, you're throwing kids into a playroom with a whole bunch of toys, and they will decide what they find useful.
So you suggest wait and see?
Well, I suggest, no, I wouldn't say wait. I'd say jump in and see what happens. I don't remember the specifics, but in the session I was just in, one of the quantified self patients found information on his own that was useful to him. It might not be useful to any other patient, but that's the whole thing. With data liberation, we get to do things even if nobody else in the world finds any value in it. I want to quote one of my favorite lines because it's so important. People say, be careful, there's garbage on the internet. Well, yesterday I quoted Dr. Eisenbach, who said that in a 3-year study he found no cases of death by Googling. True. There is garbage on the internet, but also I'm fond of pointing out that I found my wife on the internet 15 years ago.
That's beautiful.
On Match.com.
That's beautiful.
But before I found her, I went through some suboptimal search results.
True.
Right? So there's gold out there, there's garbage out there, and part of what we're learning to do is how to be smarter information shoppers.
It's important to filter the information, and
well, of course.
You don't have to wait for somebody to do it for you. You have to do it yourself.
Well, it's also, to tie in with the Adam and Eve thing, I'm old enough to remember when email was new, and then when my parents started using it and grandparents started using it. And when everybody was new to email, there was a point in their life where they or one of their friends said, holy crap, I'm related to a Nigerian prince. I'm going to get rich.
Wow.
Well, then you discover, that's not what it looks like. And you learn to become smarter.
That's really amazing. How shocking to you was your popularity here in Stockholm or in Sweden?
Well, it's funny. This might sound a little odd. I try very much not to be, I'm not impressed with how much people are tweeting about what I say, because it's clearly not just that I'm such a charming guy. I mean, I'm no George Clooney or anybody of the sort. But what's interesting is what is it that people are hearing, right? That's altering their view of things, because that's where the access to changing the culture is. So what I'm really curious. I only got to speak 20 minutes yesterday, but people heard things that are altering their perception, and that's a good thing.
Well, we're running out of time, but it's really, really amazing to talk to you. I mean, time flies when we talk to you.
Sure. Well,
but I would really love, or we would love to see you again here in Stockholm, maybe next year.
Sure.
Yeah.
Well, I learned so much from visiting the Nobel Museum. The science has a method, it has a process, it has a timeline, which is good and rigorous and robust. But there are also things in the culture of science that are clearly flaws because they incorrectly block new knowledge, sometimes for decades. We need to understand together, as scientists and citizens, what's happening when the system fails like that, because just releasing that discovered but suppressed truth will produce new value.